we're going to handle our 6.5 10 a.m. item, which is a public hearing consideration of appeal, PL 26-357 of the Planning Commission's denial of major use permit PL 26-115 UP and 21-17 and mitigated negative declaration PL 26-115 IS 2118 for Seigler Springs North Forest Elie located at 11615 and 11625 Seigler Springs North in Kelseyville with APN numbers 115007-03 and 115007-06, and we need to swear in any witnesses from both sides. So if you're part of the community development or the appellant, to stand and be sworn, as well as anyone online. I don't know if anyone has people online, but if so, they need to raise their hand as well for the clerk.
Oh, okay, I don't. Oh, Jason Flanders on Zoom. All right, everyone else with your right hand raised, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
And then, go ahead.
I don't mean to hear a discussion that's happening, but I do want some clarification as well. Can County Council give us the difference between witness testimony and public comment? Because it used to be that everybody would get up and raise their hand and say their oath, and now we're splitting that up, and I'm slightly confused. I just want to make sure that we recognize the weight of statements made by those who swore under oath and are going to do testimony versus those who provide general public comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just generally speaking, they both function in the same way, but public comment is under the is conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Brown Act, by which it states, yes, paraphrasing here, that under the Brown Act, every item, almost every item before your board would need to have public comment. With this being a public hearing, this is in addition to the Brown Act, a separate set of procedures by which, with this being a public hearing, land use appeal, we're working under the zoning ordinance of the County of Lake, and it provides that witnesses must be sworn in. So as a matter of evidence, your board must take into consideration and give its proper weight to any witness testimony that's presented to your board under this appeal. And that is somewhat different from the purposes of for public comment, which is required under the Brown Act, by which your board may take into consideration any public comment that's being provided by members of the public. However, they're not sworn. However, they have not been sworn in as witnesses. That would be the difference. It's a little different, but it's really working under its separate set of procedures.
Okay.
Additional question? Or?
I don't know that. I mean, if we get public comments about the process, about the behavior of community development, the behavior of the applicants, that's a testimony of sorts, a witness testimony of what they've experienced with them. We're not supposed to, like, that feels like a testifying rather than just a public comment. I don't like the project, I like the project. It just makes it difficult for me if not everybody is deemed the same for being under oath, providing appropriate testimony, which it could include their own public comment. I will do my best, but I think that still leaves me slightly confused as to how to handle those who are sworn in versus not sworn in and the weight of their comments. So,
yeah, well, the way I've been understanding it and handling it, as County Council stated, was that if they were part of the testimony of either side, that they'd be sworn in, and the other folks would be, yes, they have an interest in it, but not necessarily witnesses in the sense that they were part of the procedure. So with that, I will clarify for folks in the room, I know we have people here that do want to provide public comment, but just to confirm, for my knowledge, you folks are concerned residents or citizens that want to provide comment as part of this presentation, but no one else sitting in the audience is part of either side's team. Is that correct? Do I have anybody else in here that's part of the appellant or the applicant's case? No? Okay. Thank you.
You sure about?
I'm
a little confused. I might be.
Yeah, so hang on a second. What I'm stating is that I'm swearing in county staff and the applicants, people that are going to provide testimony. What I was trying to clarify is that the folks in the room are not part of either side. You're residents or concerned citizens that are going to want to provide public comment today as part of this item, which the board will consider before we make a final decision. You have a question, quickly come to the mic, please.
Real quick.
Mr. Chair, I think in this case, the appellant and the applicant are one and the same. So it's the applicant that's appealing. So to say you're on one side or the other, if you're a concerned citizen, I think what you're describing doesn't necessarily apply to what's actually happening right now.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that I wasn't going to swear in folks that weren't part of that applicant or appellant, however we're describing it. So, all right, with that, so we're sworn in, and we will go ahead and start with Community Development to present this.
Thank you. Mireya Turner, Community Development Director. I will turn the microphone over to Associate Planner Trish Turner for our presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Trish Turner. I'm an Associate Planner with the Community Development Department. For the Board's consideration of PL 26-357, Appeal of Major Use Permit PL 26-115, Seigler Springs North. The appellant, excuse me, and the project consultant are present in the chambers, and the appellant has prepared a brief presentation following staff's presentation, should the Board so be inclined. The basis for the appeal. On October 26, 2023, PC hearing, Commission raised 3 concerns requiring tree mitigation plan, grading plans, and conducting tribal cultural resources consultations. The hearing was then reheard June 11th, 2026 at the PC. All 3 prior concerns were addressed. The hearing resulted in a tie vote, triggering an automatic appeal. The permit request. The project proposes major use permit for 3 acres of outdoor commercial cannabis canopy and 1 type 13 distribution self-transport only license. Parcel sizes combined are approximately 84.55 acres. In 2024, the applicant did change and the scope of the project was reduced from 4 acres to 3 acres. The conditions of approval have been amended to add 2 additional conditions regarding the use of North Seigler Springs Road and regarding the no development zone on the project parcels. The site is located approximately 4.35 miles southwest of the Lower Lake Community Growth Boundary and is within the Cobb Mountain Planning Area and Supervisor District 5. The base zoning for this is Timberland Preserve District with the general plan designation being resource conservation. The surrounding land uses include rural residential dwellings, agricultural uses, and cannabis uses. The site description. The project properties are located in a rural area surrounded by hilly topography with oak woodland and brush vegetation. The cultivation areas are on a relatively flat portion of the site. And due to the rural nature of the site and because it is visually protected by the natural topography and surrounding vegetation, the cultivation activities would not be seen from any public roads. The closest off-site residence meets the setback requirements. The existing uses is 1 permitted groundwater irrigation well, 1 locking access gate, and interior roadway improvements. The scope of the project: 3 acres of in-ground outdoor commercial cannabis canopy, 1 ADA compliant restroom, 1 15-foot by 15-foot trash enclosure, 2 8-foot by 40-foot shipping containers, 1 for chemical storage and 1 for harvest storage, 1 40-foot by 20-foot composting area, 6 5,000-gallon water storage tanks for cultivation operations, 1 5,000-gallon fire suppression tank equipped with a 2.5-inch coupler for fire department access, 4 regular parking spaces, and 1 ADA compliant parking space. The project was analyzed under the Lake County General Plan, the Cobb Mountain Area Plan, the Lake County Zoning Ordinance, the 2024 CEQA Guidelines, and state regulations, with the findings found in Exhibit A, the staff report. All impacts to the environment could be mitigated to less than significant, with mitigation measures incorporated into the project's conditions of approval, which is Attachment A3, and outlined in the draft mitigated negative declaration, which is Attachment A5. Public comment period occurred for the draft initial study mitigated negative declaration from January 26, 2024 to February 25th, 2024. AB 52 tribal notification was sent to the tribes having Aboriginal territory in and around Lake County. After the Planning Commission hearing held on October 26, 2023, there were some concerns voiced regarding tribal artifacts. A second AB 52 notice was sent out on January 26, 2024, to allow local tribes the opportunity to provide feedback. Of the notified tribes, Middletown Rancheria responded in February of 2024. The Tribal Historic Preservation Officer conducted a site visit. At that time, there was evidence of tribal cultural resources within the vicinity. To ensure the protection of these resources, mitigation measures for tribal cultural resources have been incorporated into the initial study, Attachment A5, and the conditions of approval, Attachment A3. Points of interest: water usage. The applicant submitted a hydrology report and a drought management plan, Attachment A6, to Exhibit A staff report. Cultivation will be supported by 1 on-site permitted irrigation well. Based on the analysis, there is an annual total water usage of 4.9 acre-feet per year. The hydrogeologist determined the annual recharge rate is 26.3 acre-feet a year. Points of interest: tree removal and dead and dying trees. The project proposes tree removal and an oak mitigation plan, Attachment A8 from January 2024, and Exhibit F, July 2026, for replanting of oak trees. The oak mitigation plan proposes removal of 71 black oak trees, and according to the arborist, approximately 15% of those trees are in poor or declining health. The applicant proposes removal of several dead and dying trees that were damaged in the Valley Fire of 2015, and the mitigation plan proposes planting 213 trees that will be maintained for 7 years. Point of interest: there are 5 large healthy black oaks situated in the northwest corner of the proposed cultivation site. Those will be retained. During the staff's last site visit on July 28, 2026, staff observed repopulation of native trees on the project parcel not located within the cultivation site. Points of interest: no development zone. The applicant proposes a no development zone to preserve existing oak woodlands and waterways outside of the project area. The applicant and consultant can provide further information for the no development zone following staff's presentation. And approved projects in the area. There are 11 approved projects within 3 miles of this project as listed in an Exhibit A staff report, pages 11 and 12. Staff recommends uphold the appeal PL 26357, reversing the Planning Commission's automatic denial of major use permit PL 26115 for UP 2117 and initial study PL 26115 IS 2118 for Seigler Springs North, Forest Elie, for commercial cannabis cultivation of no more than 3 acres of outdoor cannabis canopy located at 11615 and 11625 Seigler Springs North, Kelseyville, APNs 115-00703 and 115-00706. And that concludes my presentation for today.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions for community development at this point? Not seeing any. We will go ahead and move over to your presentation.
Okay, I had a few words to speak about.
Is that mic on?
Oh, there we go. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Forrest Elie. Growing up on 20 acres in the wilderness of southern Humboldt and being named Forrest gave me a lifelong appreciation of trees, agriculture, and responsible stewardship of the land. Protecting the natural environment while supporting local agriculture has always been important to me. Since 2022, we have worked diligently to obtain this approved use permit. Throughout this process, we have invested significant time, resources, and money to ensure the project complies with Article 27 of the Lake County Cannabis Ordinance. Our goal is to responsibly grow one of California's most valuable agricultural crops while operating in full compliance with county and state regulations. The concerns of Cobb Mountain community have been heard and taken seriously. To be a good neighbor and minimize potential impacts, we voluntarily made several significant changes, reducing the cultivation canopy from 4 to 3 acres, increased on-site water storage to 30,000 gallons, completed a 6-hour well production test, created a 20-acre non-development buffer zone at the headwaters of Seigler Canyon Creek drainage to help protect sensitive natural resources, modified our traffic plans so commercial vehicles travel to the west, reducing impacts to nearby residents and religious retreat center. We have met with representatives of the religious center on 3 separate occasions. Those meetings were held in good faith with a goal of listening, finding common ground, and addressing their concerns. We remain committed to being a respectful neighbor and maintaining open communication. I personally have been cultivating since 2017. Over the past decade, I've watched this industry evolve dramatically. By 2023, it became clear that the long-term success required farming at sustainable scale, using native soil, improving soil health, reducing overhead, and operating efficiently. This project represents that sustainable future. If granted this use permit, I will continue to be a responsible steward of the land and be a good neighbor. This project will generate revenue for Lake County, support local agriculture, and contribute to the county's economy. I want to see Lake County agriculture thrive, and I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anything further from your... Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Angie Dodd. I'm with North Point Consulting Group, and I prepared the hydrology report for the project as well as the response to comments on the hydrology report. So as Forrest mentioned, there's been many concessions that have been made on this project to help appease the concerns of the public. One was the reduction of cultivation canopy, outdoor canopy, from 4 acres to 3 acres, which reduces the water consumption. And the water consumption you see here is based on that 3 acres, assuming a 150-day cultivation period without accounting for the different the different states of the plant. So it's a conservative estimate on the high side. And it also doesn't take into account the proposed regenerative practices, that was hard to say, which will reduce over time the water demand as well. And I'll let if I leave anything out, Trey, you can fill in the regenerative practices. They've also increased the water storage, which is important. I like to always recommend at least 3 to 5 days of water storage. 3 would be during the kind of more peak of the season. 5 is more of an average. It allows, as you're doing your operations, and how, every cultivator is different, but with regenerative practices and the way forest operates, there's time between filling the tanks and waterings to allow a well to recover. So it allows it to, you're not just overdrawing immediately from the aquifer. So having the increased storage is helpful. It's also good for redundancy. If something happens, a pump breaks, it's good to have that. The growing medium, they've changed from imported soil and above ground planters to in-ground native soil using regenerative agricultural practices. And then what's another concession that is made that I think is important is the reduction in canopy during a drought. And we're calling it a severe drought and an extreme or exceptional drought. So there are tools in California. Next slide, please. Sorry, I have to look here so I can actually read or see what I'm doing. California has tools that we monitor water conditions and whether we're in a drought and a severe drought. So the proposal here is to monitor this before a cultivation season starts. So if we're in a severe drought, reduce the cultivation from 3 acres to 2.5 acres. And then in an extreme drought, reduce the cultivation from 3 acres to 2 acres. And that will be known before cultivation starts and will be shown when an application for the cultivation for that year, you have to do a cultivation reduction if you're reducing your cultivation. So there's some accountability and paperwork that has to be filed. Next slide. Wait, same slide. Yay. So there were lots of comments on this project. There was one report in the region by another highly qualified and reputable firm that had very similar conclusions to mine. I've read that for a much larger project. We're in a unique area, so you have volcanic aquifers. There were comments about the type of aquifer that it's in, but it was in general not specific to the region. The hydrology report gives lots of explanation of what this aquifer looks like and how it's developed over time. And there are a lot of pockets in this aquifer that allow for quite a high production of water. We see that in the average well yields around the area. I saw that in the adjacent report that was done as well. I'll try and slow down, sorry. Next slide, please. And just another cross-section view of what this aquifer looked like, because you have materials that vary because of the lava class. You get lots of water-bearing zones. And we see that in the wells that have been drilled in these volcanics, and also the local faults that you see kind of striking through the area, other ways of water getting into the aquifer and filling it up. Next slide, please. So there are various ways to calculate storage. 2 reputable firms calculate it separately. I calculate it both ways. Either way, the storage under the aquifer is greater than the demand of 4.9 acre feet. And then does that storage fill up? So that's why we do the recharge calculations. And I calculate recharge a few different ways, and then I use the most conservative estimate of recharge. So for the drought on record, during a dry year over the project parcels, it's about 6.4 acre feet. And this is just the contributing area of the parcels, not the entire storage area of the aquifer, which is about 5,000 acre feet a year. I'm just doing it project specific. And then over an average year, it's about 35 acre feet. And then a drought, fortunately, doesn't occur every year. It occurs on average maybe every 3 to 5 years. So if you take that 35 and that 6.4 and you do a weighted average over those 5 years, you still get much more than 4.9 acre feet of recharge, and it fills up that storage, which is sufficient under the parcel. And then I wanted to just talk about the well test that was done. So Lake County requires a 4-hour well test. We talk about different kinds of well tests and what's sufficient to determine long-term sustainable yield in an aquifer. I think monitoring is the only way you can determine what that is over time as you use your water. But for the 6-hour drawdown test at 25 gallons a minute, which would be the maximum pump rate, that could happen on the solar well that's proposed at full sun. So it's unlikely it will be pumped at that amount. But at 6 hours, it drew down 5 feet very quickly. It stayed at that level the entire duration of the test, and then at cessation, it recovered within a minute. So showing that under that, it's a short duration test, why I recommend monitoring, but it shows that there is sufficient evidence of sufficient water available for this activity. And then, next slide, please. Here on it. So then in addition, the well is very deep. I think it's about 440 feet. And if you look at the surface water connectivity with the depth of the well and that it's separated by those volcanics, it's coming from a confined water-bearing source that is non-diversionary, and then well below all the surface waters, and also well below the closest, below the well adjacent to this one. And then I also conducted a radius of influence to see how, as you're drawing this well down for 12, I can't remember the duration of my test, for use on a daily average for this project, the radius of influence I think that's about 200 feet, maybe 150 feet. And there's no wells within that radius of influence. There was mention of a spring. You see this old spring on the USGS map, so I have it called out on that map. The biologist couldn't find it. So there's no evidence that spring, at least, the biologists went out there, and I had a couple other folks go out and see if they can find the spring. They couldn't locate it. But the well it's much deeper than this spring. And as they're drawing from it, the radius of influence is not getting to that spring. And next slide, please. And then lastly, monitoring is very critical. And, you saw with the adjacent project that was recently approved how monitoring was very helpful. It's the same thing that's proposed here. Forest already has a monitor in mind that can monitor the water level 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I think this is critical and I'm a broken record, for any agricultural project to monitor. You monitor during your cultivation. That's a requirement of Article 27 to understand how your well is responding, so you're not pumping too high, because in the short term you can pump really high and your well goes dry because the transmissivity can't keep up with it. So you have a lower pump rate because it fills up slower. Monitoring lets you know that sweet spot for your well. And then monitoring at the fall, when you're done, can see how much it drew down. And then at the spring before you start, then you can see how much has it recharged and kind of validate those assumptions that were made. And then lastly, you have to report those findings. And so reporting those findings, it's in the conditions of approval. It's in my recommendation that I use to make my conclusions. You have to report those findings to the county and any modifications you're making to your plan because maybe your well isn't performing like you thought it was going to perform. And that could be various reasons. Construction, something can fail. There's reasons that can happen other than not having water. And then next slide.
Morning. Sit down. Okay. So one of the concerns that are the neighboring Mountain of Attention Sanctuary has brought up a lot of concerns about this project. And therefore, so a lot of the changes that Forest has incorporated into this project are to minimize or eliminate any potential impacts to the neighboring Mountain of Attention Sanctuary. We do want to note that the proposed cultivation area is nearly a mile from the Mountain of Attention Meditation Retreat Center and over 500 feet higher and on the opposite side of a ridgeline. In addition to that, as mentioned earlier, there's a 20-acre no development zone proposed between the proposed cultivation area and the Mountain of Attention Retreat Center. And the 20-acre no development zone would be a protected area preserving natural habitat along Seigler Canyon Creek and providing an extra buffer between the project site and the nearby meditation retreat center. Next slide, please. And this is a condition of approval that the applicant requested be added to the conditions of approval to codify that 20-acre no development zone. I won't go into everything, but basically this is how that 20-acre no development zone will be ensured that it exists and maintained throughout operation. Next slide, please. Another condition of approval that the applicant requested is to limit all commercial and agricultural access, including deliveries during operation hours, to North Seigler Springs Road, north of the project site. This would prevent any traffic passing through the Meditation Retreat Center, and minimize or eliminate disturbance to that community and that center. Next slide, please. This is a image, Google Earth image, but it kind of shows you that, another concern. So you see the stop sign there. That would show you how no traffic would continue south through the Meditation Retreat Center. The 20-acre no development zone is between the center and the proposed cultivation area, and the proposed cultivation area is beyond this ridge. Additionally, all electricity will come from individual solar panels, a small ground or trailer-mounted solar array. The proposed project outdoor cultivation only, and therefore only lights outside would be motion-activated security lights. Once again, all of those lights will be on the opposite side of a ridge from the nearby retreat center. Next slide, please. Why you should support this project? This is, as mentioned, is like over 80 acre property. It's overgrown with vegetation. There's dead wood everywhere. There's dying and sick trees on large portions of it. This property has largely been abandoned for decades. Approving this project will allow Forest to get in there and clean up a lot of the dead and dying material on the ground, do some vegetation management, remove ladder fuels. One of the things he desperately wants to do is get some goats in there to kind of mow down some of the vegetation, because it is a fire. In its current state, it is a real fire danger situation. And therefore we want to, ultimately Forrest would like to build his home here at some point in the future. But before he would even consider that, he's got to make the property safe for both his operation, the neighboring community, and for that future residents. Next slide, please. And then the oak mitigation plan. Yes, this project does include the removal of some native oak trees, but we have a mitigation plan in place. We have an oak retention area with the 5 really healthy and large oaks that were identified by the registered professional forester. Those are going to be preserved. We have an oak planting and restoration area, and as the forester noted during the site visit, that the regeneration is occurring, and so the area selected for the planting and reforestation is suitable for such activity. But the one takeaway I had from the forester's report is that the cultivation site was located to minimize impacts on mature oak trees. So basically, we selected the best site on this property. If we're going to have to remove oak trees, we selected the best site to do so because it has the worst trees on the property. Next slide, please. And then, so this will conclude our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. We hope you understand that. Thank you for your time and consideration. The applicant Forest has seriously considered the concerns raised by neighbors and neighboring land users, and has designed the proposed project to minimize and mitigate any potential impacts to the environment, as well as residents and visitors of the surrounding area. Forest is and will be a good neighbor, farmer, rancher, and land steward. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from board members at this point?
I'll wait till the end. I do have questions.
Okay. All right. Anything further from community development? No? Okay. All right. Then with no questions at this point, no further testimony be provided, we'll go ahead and open it up to the public. And if you could state your name, please, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Good morning, supervisors. Good morning, Mr. Elie. My name is Alexander Powell, and I'm the CFO and CAO for Adidam Holy Domains, the nonprofit organization that maintains the Mountain of Attention Sanctuary, which borders the property, applying for a permit for the 3-acre commercial cannabis facility. I want to focus on one question. What do the independent environmental reviews tell this board about the adequacy of the applicant's environmental analysis? The answer is very clear. There are significant data gaps and data errors in the mitigated negative declaration that cannot be resolved simply by adopting mitigation measures. To begin with, we engaged 2 independent certified hydrogeologists from Geosyntec, one in 2024 at the first hearing, and then again this year, to review the applicant's groundwater analysis. Both found that the data applies formulas that are inappropriate for this highly complex, fractured volcanic rock aquifer. The applicant relies on 2 to 6 hour pump tests conducted in June rather than in the dry months. A 6-hour test does not establish sustainable yield in a fractured rock aquifer or reliably predict long-term drawdown. More importantly, the applicant's analysis assumes that water levels completely recover every day when pumping stops, as shown. That is particularly concerning because the Department of Water Resources documents that fractured volcanic rock wells can experience substantial declines in production over time, up to 80%. Another major concern is their assumption that 10% of rainfall recharges deep fractured rock aquifer. But the USGS fact sheet they cited by the applicant to support this assumption is titled Groundwater Recharge in Humid Areas of the United States. They state that Seigler Canyon Creek is 500 feet south of the cultivation site, but the well is literally on the headwaters of the creek as shown on their own map and on any map. Perhaps this is why they moved the well location on the submitted map closer to the site, further north to the grow site, not next to the road where it is actually located. The applicant acknowledges a USGS topographic map that identifies a natural spring on the property, yet their consultant could not locate it. This is a significant unresolved hydrological data gap. And this is not an isolated water issue. The county reports, well, we've heard 11, maybe more, cannabis cultivation permits within 3 miles of this site. And during the 2023 drought, the nearby Mountain of Attention Sanctuary aquifer stopped production for the first time in 52 years. These are a few examples of the gaps and errors in the applicant's environmental analysis, and together they raise substantial questions about groundwater availability, cumulative impacts, and whether the MND adequately addresses the project's environmental effects. I respectfully ask the board not to rely on this mitigated negative declaration. These unresolved technical issues warrant a full environmental impact report before the project can be responsibly considered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Timothy Toy. I'm a real estate broker. I've been selling real estate in Lake County for 32 years, and Adidam Holy Domains has asked me to speak to you all on the matter of the easement access to the project site. The application simply states a project property is accessed via private gravel and native oil serviced access road off of Seigler Springs North Road. So that access goes through a property that is owned by Holy Domains. Holy Domains has not given a easement to either the applicant, the property owners, and there's a lock gate. So there is no valid legal access to a public road that this property has. So that statement in the applicant's and the application is untrue. Article 27 of the zoning ordinance of Lake County says in a commercial cannabis grow, page 74P1, access standards, any site where a cannabis-related activity is permitted shall have access to a public road or recorded easement that allows for and is not limited to delivery trucks, emergency vehicles, sheriff and other law enforcement officers, and government employees who are responsible for inspections or enforcement actions. This project doesn't have that. You have to follow your own regulations. Now, everybody knows this. The planning department knows this. The applicant knows this. The owners of the property knows this. The commission knew this. Yet here we are. It doesn't matter whether you owned a property or you want to own a property or you should own a property. If you do not own a property, you do not have a legal right to give an easement to another property. That's the law. This is America. We respect private property rights. I don't think there's any way the board can possibly approve this permit application without violation of its own zoning ordinance, as I just read. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Rasmussen,
Yes.
If we could just direct the board's attention to Exhibit A7, which is the recorded grant of easement for this access.
What was the exhibit number again?
Exhibit A7.
Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Elliot Hurwitz, a resident of the Cobb area, and I live about 1.5 miles from the project. I'm the chair of the Cobb Area Council Forest Stewardship Committee and executive director of the Seigler Springs Community Development Association, where we're developing a new Cobb Area Community Wildfire Protection Plan and producing the Cobb Mountain Watershed Education and Restoration Program. I'm speaking today in my personal capacity, drawing on a 35-year career in environmental policy, and I urge you to uphold the Planning Commission's denial of the project. There's 2 areas I want to emphasize. The first, turns out Mr. Powell really went into more technical detail than even I was going to go into. I only want to point out that there are, even though the applicant's looking to discount it, there are the independent technical review by 2 prominent certified hydrogeologists credibly contests these findings. And this is critical. I think that, yeah, it may come down to a fairly scientific argument about it, but you really need to look at it in detail. 6-hour pump test is really not sufficient to measure the long-term drawdown, and particularly the looking at multi-year pumping is the resilience of the aquifer is not assured under a multi-year, and just saying, okay, we'll monitor it, you know, that's the kind of testing and that needs to be done before this application is granted. You can't say, okay, well, yeah, maybe it'll peter out over the years, but we're monitoring it. No, we need to know that beforehand. The second area I want to address is that the project is in conflict with local zoning and state forestry mandates. Projects sit entirely within protected TPZ, timber preserve zones. Yet the applicant plans to cut over 3 acres of mature timberland, including the destruction of 71 black oaks, not just dead and dying trees, including over a dozen mature 65 to 80-year-old trees, even under their amended proposal. The California Public Resources Code, Section 4621, requires timberland owners to file a conversion application with CAL FIRE if they plan to use that land in a TPZ for something other than growing timber. The applicant entirely omitted this mandatory state-level review from the initial study. I suggest the board cannot legally declare the impacts mitigated. Hydrology report is fatally flawed. State mandated timber conversion has been bypassed. I urge you to uphold the challenge and reject the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, board members. I think there was something that was a handout for everybody. As chair of the Seigler Springs Firewise community, I am presenting safety data that the current environmental review has ignored. If you'll look at the table on the first page of your handout. Thank you. Our residents invested over $160,000 in 2025 alone to manage hazardous fuels basin-wide. We've built a functional fire break. This project destroys that work by replacing our watershed buffer with 22 high-density hoop houses, the developers adding mechanical and electrical ignition risks directly into our neighborhood. The project's traffic threatens evacuation in the region. Paving internal driveways does not fix our public right-of-way bottlenecks, and page 2 of your handout lists 3 critical failures, all mapped in your materials. The northern escape on Red Hill Road has a 22.5% median grade and less than 18 feet of width. This choke point, with standard rural asphalt, does not meet the capacity standard for heavy fire engines and livestock trailers, will collapse under evacuation stress. The southern gate 30 degree has been mentioned, and I'm glad that you're recognizing that simultaneous civilian escape and emergency vehicle access will be physically impossible. The Highway 29 terminus, with a blind crest, forces traffic blindly into high-speed highway lanes. CAL FIRE's own 2015 Valley Fire records document how narrow feeder roads and blind highway merges caused catastrophic gridlock on Highway 29 and throughout the region. Our technical exhibits prove that Seigler Springs project currently faces those identical structural vulnerabilities, creating the same high risk of failure if we are forced to evacuate. CEQA requires a stable project description. We cannot defer mitigation to future compromises. Furthermore, per the Bonta versus Lake County, you cannot legally approve a project in a very high fire hazard severity zone without a realistic, site-specific evacuation model. Safety must be proven objectively. We urge the board to protect our lives, uphold the Planning Commission's denial, and mandate a full environmental impact report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Indigo Perry. I've been a resident of Lake County since '89, and I'm also the founder of a new emergency preparedness organization here in Lake County called Is Everybody Ready? That will focus specifically on helping older adults and other vulnerable citizens prepare for disasters. Seniors with disabilities and those needing assistance are a big part of the Seigler Springs community. We want to make sure these vulnerable citizens with access and functional needs stay safe. My concern is how the increased traffic from Seigler Springs LLC would affect emergency evacuations. And so my question is, has the applicant completed a site-specific evacuation analysis that models wildfire conditions during construction, cultivation, and harvest, not just normal traffic, but actual evacuation traffic? Any such analysis would specifically have to account for seniors and others with access and functional needs. Where in the record is that analysis? Evacuations move only as fast as the slowest vehicles. Many residents will not be able to leave without assistance, mobility equipment, or help from caregivers, and many may be driving slowly. Additional traffic on narrow, windy roads with few pullouts increases the risk of delays, especially if evacuations occur at night, in heavy smoke, or while emergency vehicles are entering the area. The Seigler Springs LLC project would increase vehicle trips, exacerbating conditions that are already questionable. Many seniors in the Seigler area also own horse and livestock properties that require the use of trailers and other large vehicles. These vehicles take up significantly more road space and are slower to maneuver than passenger cars. During an emergency evacuation, the need for seniors to navigate these larger vehicles while emergency responders are entering the area would make these narrow roads even more difficult to manage. Additional traffic would make the problem even worse. Until the county has a site-specific wildfire evacuation analysis demonstrating that this project will not compromise public safety during a wildfire, I respectfully urge the board to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair,
Go ahead.
Staff would like to draw the attention of the board to the Exhibit A or Attachment A, the Planning Commission staff report, which proposes for this project 2 full-time employees and 3 seasonal employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
If you think I look bad, you should see the other guy. My name is Duncan Gamlin. Good morning, Chair and members of the board and Forrest. My name is Duncan Gamlin. I'm the fire marshal for the Mountain of Attention Sanctuary. I've been a real estate broker for 45 years. I was a commercial grower for 15 years. I am absolutely, definitely not anti-cannabis. The first thing, which was not on my prepared document, was I wanted to address what Johanna, am I saying that right? Address the easement. That's not a valid easement. That easement was granted by somebody who didn't own the property. So it doesn't work, and that's the whole point. I live on the North Road. I've lived there for 2 years now. I've been driving Seigler Springs North Road and Diener Drive for 52 years. I have documented in my report, which shows up as attachment B in our attorney's letter, and on pages 6 through 10, I documented with photographic evidence the choke points on that road that would prohibit effective, efficient evacuation. So I know we're hitting on evacuation a lot, but it's the only one of the conditions here that we're considering that involves lives. Lives will be lost if we don't get this right. So that's why it's come up 3 times. The second aspect is the initial study discusses defensible space, fire protections, but it does not include site-specific analysis about the evacuation. The other thing that I want to mention is that they have designated a 5,000-gallon reservoir for fire protection. It's completely inadequate. A Type 3 CAL FIRE engine can pump 500 gallons a minute. So 5,000 just doesn't do anything. The project also, my second point, the project also raises an unresolved land issue. I've got to hurry. The proposed cultivation intersects a mapped commercial cannabis exclusion area as applied by the county through the GIS mapping system during permit review. When any portion of a parcel intersects an exclusion area, the parcel is treated as being within the exclusion area. You can see that in your records. This is, the blue is the exclusion, goes right into it. By your own standards, it can't be done. So I had another point, but I'm out of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room?
Good morning, board. Amanda Martin, private citizen and resident of Loch Lomond. I am opposed to this project because of the irreversible effects on trees and water. Now, I know each one of you deeply care about the environment, so I am just preaching to the choir, but I also know that at times your hands can be tied because our policies have not caught up with the climate crisis that we are in today. To say that removing 71 healthy established oak trees is mitigating by putting acorns into the ground at a 3-to-1 ratio is a joke. Let's call it what it is. It is a checkbox on a form that tries to clear the way to the road to profit. While reviewing this project at the Planning Commission, which they denied, Chair Zoller stated, quote, "I'm very concerned about the tree removal. 76 mature oak trees that are healthy, they just shouldn't be taken out," end quote. Now for water. This project will use 1,602,000 gallons of water per year. Just because we cannot identify them as the single culprit, because there are so many, does not mean that there is not a massive issue with our water table. For this project alone, there are reports from hydrologists that directly contradict each other.
We have private citizens that are bending over backwards to try to understand these hydrology reports and try to articulate them to you in technical terms, but these are all things we can see with our own eyes. We know that wells are going dry. We know that creeks that used to run year-round are no longer running year-round or becoming puddles in the summer. We know that our beloved Clear Lake, the oldest lake on the continent, is this summer in the worst shape that it has ever been in. So when Commissioner Brown was reviewing this project, he said, quote, "We're always here, parcel by parcel. And in the perspective that I'm looking at the entire environment, not these little sections, each individual well, what that well test says. But we really need to focus on what is the cumulative impact to the aquifers at a baseline of all of the projects. And we don't ever see those numbers," end quote. Do you know those numbers? Does anyone know those numbers? Really? Are we going to keep allowing these individual projects to put their straws into what is ultimately our one bowl of our life-giving source, which is water, which is finite? At what point will we know that we have gone too far? When all of the wells dry up? It's like we are driving blindfolded and just expecting that it's going to work out. This isn't about not in my backyard. This isn't even about cannabis. This is about our right as citizens to water. It is about our right to advocate for all the beings' rights to water. And it is about our responsibility, our absolute responsibility to ensure that there is water for all of our future generations. Please don't approve this project when we are still driving blindfolded.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Supervisors, Margot Kambara. This project brings up several points that we've heard many times before. Maybe a few wrinkles. First off, as one of the previous speakers has already brought to your attention, there is a problem with the easement. While community development may say an exhibit will shed light on and make all clear, no, it doesn't. The easement issue is still cloudy. And in other situations, your board and the Planning Commission has been reminded it is not within your purview to adjudicate those disputes. An easement issue needs to be decided. And until then, this permit application does not meet the requirement to show legal access to the project site. Moving on, other speakers have brought up cumulative impacts. Strangely, for such a large project, cumulative impacts are not adequately studied. In fact, in your presentation that your board saw today, there were no cumulative impacts provided in terms of what other approved and pending projects are 1 mile, 3 miles, 5 miles away from this project site. This is common information previously in planning applications presented to the Planning Commission. But recently, there's been a change in the format of the reporting to the Planning Commission and apparently to your board today. So we don't see cumulative impacts on water. In fact, in terms of water, you had the occasion to hear some hydrologists counter the applicant's hydrology reports. And in addition, CEQA allows for citizens to provide data. And that is, neighbors have submitted letters to your board on this application stating that wells have gone dry. Wells have gone dry already. That alone should be cause for concern. And for, as another speaker today has pointed out to you, Mr. Hurwitz, monitoring is not mitigation. Water availability should be assured before the permit is granted. You don't allow a project to run full throttle and then you find that there's a water problem and wells are going dry and you endanger a community and then you try to come up with real mitigations. Your board is reviewing this application de novo. As as if you're seeing it for the first time. As such, there are CEQA requirements. This is being approved as under mitigated negative declaration. CEQA requirements say mitigations must be effective, measurable, and enforceable. Truly, are the conditions of approval such? Please don't accept this permit application as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in the room.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I promise not to knock anything over. Just a couple observations. A lot of stuff has already been covered. I'd like to first talk about the map of 11 items within 3 miles. What was conveniently not mentioned is how many of those are actually within 1 mile. Normally, CDD provides that information, and if you actually look at the map and compare it to the parcel viewer and things like that, of those 11, it appears that 6 or 7 of them are within 1 mile, and that wasn't disclosed. It was already pointed out a couple times about the easement. It appears that the person that granted the easement has actually no authority to grant that easement. He didn't own the property, and there's no evidence that there's of any easement. And as was pointed out, the regulations clearly require that an easement be granted. If someone who doesn't own the property is allowed to draft up an easement and have it logged and such, then I guess I can put an easement out for anybody's property and it'll be okay. In the common vernacular, that's called the Brooklyn Bridge scam. You sell something you don't actually own. The other thing that I would point out is that as we've had another appeal before this board, I think over a year ago, where the citizens, I believe this one was in the Middletown area, District 1, where the neighbor said, we're running out of water, our wells run dry. And the cumulative effect of that was part of the decision that this board made, and it appears that it's clearly an issue here when the religious sanctuary has already testified, or at least made public comment, that their well has gone dry. I think that my biggest concern is not so much with the applicant, but again, with CDD. How did it get this far with so many gaps, so many issues, very vague, unenforceable, as the previous comment made, conditions of approval? These things were brought up multiple times by the community and ignored. And as far as road safety, excuse me, I would respectfully refer you to the accident that was reported in the Press Democrat and the Lake County Record B of the fire truck that rolled over because it was trying to drive on a substandard road during a fire. And the CAL FIRE firefighters were taken to the hospital because of it. That road is not safe. Now, over and over and over and over again, we bring up that the road conditions are not safe, and the CDD seems to only look at what's inside the property and not the access. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room?
Hi, Elaine Brown, Kelseyville. I just walked in on this, but I know if it affects your water, anything is possible to get that lake drinkable again. There's the ability to do that. I'm sure AI could figure it out. But Rachel Carson, on a happy note, Rachel Carson did cite this in Silent Spring, and she's the reason we still have birds on this lake, and she got rid of DDT. So anything is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Not seeing anyone else in the room. Do we have anybody online? Sterling?
Yes. So I want to thank them for their presentation. This developer has got a really good plan. I understand the trees, cutting them down, replanting them, but also in order for fire mitigation, you have to clean the forest. If you don't clean the forest, we end up seeing fires like the Mendocino Complex fire. We're going to see fires like the Valley Fire. And then to talk about the water and the underground water in the springs. So, as everybody knows, when a big winter happens, if you go out and check the creek after the winter, you will notice that that creek stream has changed its direction, location, or wherever. So those underground springs and water that everybody's talking about, with the volcanic rock that shifts and moves during any kind of seismic activity, that groundwater can now shift and cause somebody's spring to dry up and have somebody else's spring not dry up. So when you have this licensed hydrologist here giving you their report, and then you have members of the community coming in and saying, well, there's conflict. Where is their report that shows the conflict before you guys make this decision? And then my other major concern is there was in the Press Democrat, Backstop is taking out a lot of their grapes here in Lake County. That is going to change our revenue for our county. And with Grape Vineyards taking out their grapes, that property tax now goes down. And we're going to start saying no to revenue and property taxes that could be coming in that could fund our general fund that's looking at a $71 million deficit in 3031. I think we really need to start considering and looking at these, and regenerative farming is the key. If they are planning to do regenerative farming actually helps let me rephrase that. Regenerative farming helps put water back into the ground. Regenerative farming actually helps cool the planet. Regenerative farming helps stop climate change. So if we have farmers that are coming into this county willing to do regenerative farming and willing to take those extra steps, I say, well, let's do it. And if we're going to talk about emergency exits, everywhere in Lake County has that same exact problem. They're only going to have 5 employees on there. So how much is that going to affect their way of their emergency exit with 5 extra people? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online?
Yeah, iPhone,
if you can state your name, you'll have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much for letting me speak. My name is Richard Durham. I'm a resident of Seigler Canyon, and I've driven up and down these roads for the past 30-some years. I want to address 3 items. 1 is the roads, 2 is the Black Oak Forest, and 3 is the water. So Seigler Springs North Road has always been an ag road. There's plenty of vineyards on it. Just across from this property, there's old walnut orchards. So it's not bringing something new to Seigler Springs North. If you go all the way down to the end of it, you'll see several vineyards, including Beckstalkers. So that's for the roads. As far as the Black Oak Forest, I live in a Black Oak Forest, and I've lived in it for 35 years and have managed it and maintained it. The nature of Black Oak trees and the way they grow and the way they regenerate after a fire, they require a lot of cutting anyway. So I've noticed that the more I separate my trees, the faster the trees that I separated from grow, as much as 3 feet a year. And like this year, we had a banner acorn year. And in my backyard, I've had to mow down several hundred brand new black oaks. They're really prolific. So if the operator is going to clear his land and replant black oaks grow very fast. They're not like the gray oak or live oaks. And then as far as the water, all of us live in this area on volcanic fractured aquifers. Between me and my 3 neighbors, all of us are on 3 different aquifers, and we're like 1,000 feet apart, our wells are. And so as far as their water impacting other wells in the area is very doubtful to me. So with that, I would say that there are no real substantial blocks for this project not to go forward, and I suggest that you vote to let it go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online?
Yes. Yeah.
Guest, state your name. Are you there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Angela Amaral. I'd like to strongly urge your board to read the public comment attached from Andrew Amelung for this project. While he speaks on the merits of the project, he also describes CDD's mismanagement of Mr. Elie's application and records and records, which cost him to suffer a significant financial loss. I attended the Planning Commission virtually for this project and feel that it does not vary greatly from other applications that were approved by the county with greater issues and concerns. When we talk about where these projects may be best suited, this is a location that has suitable setbacks for community growth boundaries and is in an allowable zone, the TPZ zone. While removal of oak trees is always a major concern, this county has approved projects that have removed far more healthy oaks than the proposed 71 trees to be removed for this project. I don't want to see any healthy oak trees removed for a crop that is failing industry, but your board continues to fail at implementing a meaningful oak ordinance, a simple task such as copying the oak ordinance from the city of Clear Lake. Many of the issues raised today with Seigler Springs Road, Red Hills Road, are the same concerns that were brought up over and over again for projects in District 3, most notably High Valley Road. Yet the projects were approved despite county-maintained road issues. I don't know of any projects that have had a requirement for a wildfire evacuation safety analysis. Many of the projects are in hazardous areas, and I don't know of the county requiring one. I do know some applicants have provided them voluntarily, but I don't know if it's ever been required. I think consistency needs to be highly considered here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Johanna? Jason? Go ahead, sir.
Hi, good morning. Honorable Supervisors, Jason Flanders of the ATA Law Group, counsel for the Audidom Holy Domains. We submitted written comments on Friday, and you've heard a lot of excellent, well-informed testimony today, so I'll just highlight a few key issues related to the CEQA review. First, as to forestry resources, the application materials state that there are commercial timber species on site, and therefore a timberland conversion permit should be required and submitted to CAL FIRE for review. The initial study NEGDEC avoids this by claiming the applicant has no intent to commercially grow and harvest timber, but that's not the test. The Forest Practice Act is concerned simply with maintaining viable timberlands in California, which the property is currently zoned for. As to groundwater resources, based on evidence presented by others today, it appears that the NEGDEC and hydrology report may have mischaracterized the location of the groundwater well, with potentially significant implications for effects to surface water. The application does describe the property and the well as within the headwaters of the Seigler Canyon Creek, but no assessment of potential loss to interconnected surface water is provided. The application rests on the fact that the recharge rate is higher than the use rate, but if the aquifer is not presently being used at that site, where is that recharge water presently going? There must be a connection with some other aquifer or surface water, but that loss by the project use over 1 million gallons a year is never actually accounted for. There are indeed multiple reports of groundwater wells going dry in the area. The expert hydrologist has indicated that the methodology for the aquifer recharge rate is inappropriate for this site, and the drought mitigation measures are not quantified. Finally, the hydrology report also doesn't account for the water demands for the extensive oak mitigation project. As to wildlife resources, which haven't really been discussed today, the biological assessment is admittedly incomplete, and the NEGDEC proposes that site evaluations occur after project approval. Adverse effects to species have to be analyzed and mitigated before project approval. This sort of deferral plainly violates CEQA. As to wildfire evacuation, you've heard extensive concerns today from the community members that should be fully analyzed and mitigated through a revised CEQA document. In conclusion, unless and until these deficiencies are cured, the proposed project cannot be approved in compliance with CEQA. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online, Johanna?
Another iPhone for that.
An iPhone, if you can state your name. Nobody? Okay, it might have been the same one. So nobody else? All right, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the Board of Supervisors for questions or discussion. Go ahead, Supervisor.
I'm feeling like there's comments that are ready to be made, maybe by both the staff from the department and maybe the applicant, because there were some issues raised, and I'd love to hear what their rebuttal might be or what their support might be.
Yeah, and I'll throw out one. Maybe they were going to talk about the easement. I do have some questions on that, so I'm not sure. But yeah, if you have any information you want to provide us based on what's been presented, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Michelle Iris, Senior Planner for the county. Wanted to just clarify some of the CEQA-related comments that I heard that I think may be helpful for the board's consideration. Regarding evacuation and wildfire, I thought I heard in some of the comments that it wasn't analyzed, so just wanted to bring to your attention that it was analyzed in the initial study for the project, starting on PDF page 47 of the initial study. That's the traffic and transportation analysis. In that, we do analyze transportation and evacuation, as well as on page 53, which is the wildfire section, so in two sections. In summary, as Director Turner mentioned, there are 6 permanent employees and a total of 6 permanent trips, I should say, for the employees, and 23 seasonal harvest employees at maximum. Those numbers are not... Okay, that's from the initial study, but the initial study analyzed that amount of employees, I will say, and which are not significant under CEQA. Typically, CEQA requires traffic analysis, which could then lead to an evacuation study, a formal one being prepared when there are more than 110 trips, or if we, the county development, community development department, or public works, CAL FIRE, somebody else notes a concern related to evacuation. We've seen this on some of our other projects. So in this case, because there's such little traffic regarding this project, there was not the requirement for a formal traffic analysis being prepared by a third party, and same with evacuation. For evacuation, we really rely on the Genesis project, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, for those evacuation zones, and then watch duty nixle notifications. With the project itself would not significantly introduce a new evacuation or wildfire risk. Additionally, just wanted to point out that although not required, because this is an outdoor cultivation, the applicant is proposing some fire emergency 4290 related improvements to their internal access driveways, their gate, and then of course they'll have those 5,000 gallon water tanks. Regarding a cumulative analysis, that was also raised in public comment. Page 55 of the initial study does include an analysis of cumulative impacts from other projects surrounding. And to summarize, we rely on all of the projects meeting the current regulations under Article 27, the drought and hydrology management plans, all of our conditions and regulations, mitigations that get incorporated into the project for local and state regulations that can reduce the projects to less than significant. So all of the other projects that are approved and pending would also do the same, reducing impacts to less than significant. Lastly, regarding hydrology, on page 32 of Exhibit A6, that's the hydrology reports, there's a table 3, which includes nearby APNs and an analysis of other cumulative impacts to the surrounding wells in the area. I'll let the consultants and qualified professionals speak to the details of that if needed, but just wanted to point out that it was also addressed in that section. Lastly, regarding the exclusion zone comment that came up, so our current GIS portal has several of the exclusion criteria that are categorized under the exclusion zone. The one noted by the public was for public waters Connections, as I understand under Article 72, it was either proposed or allowed to connect to public water systems. That is no longer the case. That's not the case in Article 27. So that was an exclusion layer that was just inadvertently left on our GIS portal. But when you click that off, and we're happy to show you if that's helpful, but the project is not located in any of the cannabis exclusion zones. And I'll turn it over to Director Turner.
Actually, let's discuss the timber preserve zone and timber conversion first, and then I'll finish up with the easement.
Staff is prepared to add a condition if timberland is within the project area and is proposed for conversion, then either a timber harvesting plan or a 3-acre conversion exemption is required to be accepted or approved by CAL FIRE prior to any tree removal.
There is condition A3, which requires prior to operation and construction, the permittee shall obtain permits from all necessary federal, state, and local agencies. But this could be vague, so we'd like to add that proposed condition, should the board be amenable, regarding specificity to the timberland conversion permit, so that we can make sure it's covered. Lastly, doing a title review regarding a validity of ownership for a recorded easement is outside of the purview of this department. That is a civil matter. So should the board be concerned regarding that, we're happy to propose the addition of condition A26, which would be access to the project site shall be via legally granted easement access. We ran this by county council, and this is appropriate in order to satisfy that. And then the property owners can go ahead and figure that out outside of this hearing.
Okay, anything else?
No, but we're happy to answer any further questions.
Okay, thank you for the info on the easement. I had questions because I'm looking at it. It appears to be a valid easement from 1993, and there was comments saying that the person that granted it didn't own the property, but we have no way of
Correct.
figuring
I would defer to county council for further information.
And nor was there evidence to even to show that. So, all right, thank you. Go ahead, Supervisor Owen.
Okay. So the easement is a concern of mine. I think that that's something that can actually, I don't know if we're really following our own requirements by allowing this. The amount of traffic with 2 full-time employees, 3 part-time, I believe you said, and then 23 at Harvest is significant. But when you had mentioned, you only mentioned 5, 3 part-time and 2. But there's also deliveries, and it states in there what they're going to do with their whatever it's called, to take it off for processing. So there's other traffic in the area as well, which was not noted. And ironically, with this being in timber preserve, I don't understand why we're wanting to reduce this, not just the 71 black oaks, but there's also ponderosa pines in that area. It doesn't state how many of those would be removed, but it does state ponderosa pines. The fact that we already have 11 approved cannabis projects in that circumference makes me worry about the amount of water. I know that we just approved an expansion at Pasta Farms, which is near there. So there's not an endless amount of water. And I'm really concerned about the water. And that's probably by far my biggest concern, of course, is water. It doesn't state, and I had called Ms. Maria on this yesterday, how many plants per acre?
Yes, thank you. I did respond to that inquiry via email yesterday. It was about approximately 5,000 plants per acre, as noted in the documentation.
Okay, I didn't find it in there. So that I just did an AR search, and it stated around 5,000 per acre is what they were expecting. I did conservative because I didn't know what was going to be coming forward. And at the amount of water per plant per day, I saw a 5 in there, I saw a 6 in there per day, and I believe that's considered an average, because obviously if you have small plants, they're not going to require that much, and when we have triple-digit heat in the late summer, early fall, I've just did some AI research as well, and it's stating up to 12, 14 or more gallons per plant per day, and often having to water twice a day for heat stress, to avoid heat stress. So the numbers that I'm coming up with are significantly higher and I did a conservative, so at 4,000 plants per acre, it would be more like, it's in the millions of gallons per month. So just the water, I don't like that we only did a 6-hour test. When to do a home, you have to have a better test, and we're not required to do that. So we don't really have an idea of how much water is available. And to run people's wells dry when there's already so much being sucked out of the ground for other grows, I think it's irresponsible, and I think it could even be criminal.
I would direct the board's attention to the oak mitigation plan, Exhibit F, which does address the ponderosa pines mentioned by Supervisor Owen, and I would defer to the hydrogeologist who knows a lot more about these hydrogeology reports, and she's been doing them for decades, to respond to your concerns.
And I do understand that she does know more about this. I also know who's paying her bill to get the results they want. So I don't feel, I think that we're underestimating the amount of water that it takes to grow a pot plant in the later days. In the fall, when they're blooming and flowering, it takes more water than 5 or 6 gallons per day per plant.
Additionally, if I could clarify, I think we're getting a little confused or conflating the number of employees and the number of trips. This project proposes 2 full-time employees with 3 seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
23 that was mentioned earlier is actually 23 seasonal trips with 6 full-time trips. So that was the anticipated impacts on the roads.
Okay, so is that mean there won't be anybody there harvesting, or are those 3 part-time going
The
to
3
harvest?
seasonal are for harvest purposes.
And you won't need any more than that for 3 acres?
I'll defer to the applicant regarding confirmation of the project description.
We plan to grow sustainable and small plants, and at this point there's no drying facility, so we'll be harvesting what we can haul off that day, so we feel a small crew would work.
A small crew of how many? Just the full-time employees and part-time employees?
It's going to vary on weather conditions and the plants, but our goal is to have a smaller farm. We're not the neighbor who has 30 acres of canopy. We're a small farm at 3 acres, and the crew that we set forth thinks we can do the job.
So was that skirting my question, or was it answering? Did you give me a number?
We plan to have the original amount that we stated, the 5 employees.
5,
for
just the normal 5?
Yes.
No others?
Yes.
That, of course, would be validated on an annual basis through the annual performance report.
Okay. And it still doesn't fix the water issues. And you had mentioned the smaller size plants, so that would reduce it back down, where you're not using the 12 to 14 gallons during the heat. But I'm still, it's not something I feel comfortable with as far as depleting the water sources for the people there in that area. I think it's irresponsible.
Any other questions?
No, I have quite a bit on here, but I think I'll just leave it at that. The analysis of the well, that kind of refers to it. First stated 40 gallons per minute for a 2-hour test. They went back and did a 6-hour test, and it was 25 gallons per minute. I don't think it's adequate.
So let's detail that.
Go ahead.
So the well casing can only accommodate a certain size pump. It's not an ag well casing. when we did the well test, I told Joe from Jim's Pump to put the biggest pump that was capable down there, and he did. And 25 gallons a minute was the most that we could pull. And we plan to put a solar well in, so that's going to vary on the water, on the sun, on how much is hitting those 10 panels. But water is definitely a concern for me. It has been from the start of joining this project, and that's why we've made these considerations to be neighborly and to consider everyone's water sources. And we've made considerable downsizes of this project to be a good neighbor. And that's what I have to say on that.
Now, in the report, there was also mention of 2 off-site wells.
Maybe in the cumulative impact analysis, but can I respond to a bunch of this? So Angie Dodd with North Point Consulting. AI is absolutely wrong. Sorry about that. The original cannabis quote of 6 gallons per day per plant is from one reference, and it's from a study that was done during illegal cultivation when the plants were huge. So that 6 gallons per day per plant does not work for smaller plants. These are much smaller, over an acre. If you did the math on how many of those large plants you could put over an acre, it would be 500, not 5,000. And so if you look at other cultivation projects, I base it on the actual canopy square footage, not the number of plants, because that's a more representative way of doing the calculations. But that 6 gallons per day per plant is only valid under very specific conditions for very large plants spread out over an acre. It's approximately around 500 plants. So 500, that's your magnitude more than what this is going to do. If you look at Pasta Farms that it was just approved, they quoted 0.88 gallons per day per plant. They have 6,000 plants per acre. So very similar numbers in terms of the volume and being reasonable about calculating that. The number that you just quoted is just not accurate for these size of plants.
And I apologize, I didn't see the size of plants in your, as a matter of fact, I had to call to find out how many. So
this project has morphed over time. You heard from one of the public commenters that it has changed. It has been reduced significantly, and detail has been added to respond to comments. So more detail, and I have a revised hydrology reports. I've also responded to all of the comments, and I wanted to point out a few things about dry wells. It's thrown out quite often without providing me the information of where these dry wells are and what happened. There's a lot of reasons why a well can go dry. But in my response to the comments originally from Geosyntech regarding dry wells at the church site, it was noted, I got the report and I reviewed it, that the well that went dry ran 80 gallons per minute per day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the well that went dry. All the other wells in the report were not dry. So it was just that one, and that well's over half a mile away from this project down in the valley. So different situation. I didn't have any other information on that well, but just to get orders of magnitude, they were sucking the water out quite a bit, and that's why that well went dry, or one reason why I'm assuming that well went dry. What else do I have? Well tests. So you often get a driller who reports on a well completion report, capacity 100 plus gallons per minute. So it got over time in Lake County as cannabis projects were being brought forward, and we were relying on the well completion report for the production. And it's usually done on an airlift test, so doing a longer well production test with a pump that fits in there is a more reasonable amount to get an estimate. It is a one-time estimate. There are requirements for drinking water systems to do longer tests, but that's more to validate, will there be sufficient water for a public drinking water system where they're relying on it for a long period of time? And then that also includes tons of monitoring. In terms of CEQA, there's been comments regarding monitoring. Monitoring and reporting is a very common component of CEQA mitigation measures. We do it for biology, we do it for cultural resources, we do it for hydrology. When we talk about experts, and I get questioned on my expertise, it's a little offensive, sorry to say that, but it is. This is a stamped product. My license is on this product, and I stand by this product, and I have to legally and professionally stand by this product. And this is my experience. I've turned down conducting hydrology reports because I couldn't commit to defending the project. So I have turned down hydrology reports. Was there anything else? I think I got all your items. So actual quantity of water is based on size of the plant and how many are on site. And it's based on well-published numbers for that. And I use the higher end of those numbers. I try to be conservative because I want to demonstrate that the water is there and can be there.
And you know, with the dry well downstream from the grows, it would only make sense with the amount of water because you had stated how many years they'd been pumping that at 80 gallons per minute.
It's been there a while, so I don't know.
It's been there a while. And so downstream now, there's not that much water going down to feed into that well.
This well is much lower and hydrally disconnected from that. Also, I wanted to point out one more thing about well testing in general and what's required by our environmental health so if you want to poke a well in and it's just a standard domestic well, it's not required to do a long-term well pump test for a domestic well. And an irrigation well that doesn't require a use permit can just poke a hole in the ground and start using it without a test. It's really that testing. So the county has a standard of 4 hours. Forest did a 6-hour test, and it really didn't budge during that 6-hour test. That shows pretty robust amount of water, even if you did it for a 72-hour or a 10-day test, which is the drinking water system requirement. That doesn't show that it's going to go for 20 years. Drinking water systems have to replace their wells all the time. I'm helping someone in Colusa County do the analysis for replacing an extremely prolific well. You moved it, and you have to do that. But well testing, I think it's important. I think monitoring is important, and just understanding, how wells are drilled and monitored in the state of California. But now I'm rambling, so I want to stop.
Thank you.
Can we add one thing?
Go ahead.
About the easement, I also just wanted to bring up the fact that over 100 acres of grapes have been removed from the Seigler Canyon Creek watershed in the last couple of years, and I believe it's more than 1,000 acres of grapes have been removed within 5 miles of this project site. So there's going to be, those agricultural uses were extracting groundwater to irrigate the grapes, and they're no longer going to do that. So that water will be available in the future. But Forest had the easement evaluated by First American Title Insurance Company, and they said that it was a valid, solid easement, that they would stand behind it and have issued title insurance on this property, including that easement.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Supervisor Spatier.
I got a no answer from my colleague. I'm going to start a little bit at the higher level and then drill down. I too have concerns about water, but at this moment, Ms. Dodd, you and I have had arguments in the past. I will not be arguing with you on your report. I think the report is complete, and I think I would fail to argue against an expert such as yourself. But we have talked about, and I'm going to go slightly to the side, we have talked about doing a categorical EIR on water. Has that begun? Because I think that's the important missing component where the public would feel a little bit more knowledgeable. We would be much more knowledgeable as to what have we found versus what has the expert that has been hired by the applicant found, which I'm not trying to say that that expert would have a bias. They do have their license that they have to keep. Have we started that process?
No.
So I think that's an important conversation to have sooner than later.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just to begin, because yes, there is a point of no return, and yes, there's a lot of grapes being pulled. That can be replaced easily with other things tomorrow. So that's kind of a red herring to say they're using less water, but tomorrow they can do something because farming that is not cannabis doesn't require this process. I also want to go to the Planning Commission. This is the second time that we've had to do an appeal because of the lack of people that are showing up to our Planning Commission to make the decisions that we asked them to make. And it's a difficult job. There's a very low level pay, and I apologize to them for that. But I think we need to do better because this takes a lot of time and process. And we need to have the right conversations with the right people to see how it is that we can make sure that we are doing the best full decision rather than leaving 3 people behind where a 2-1 leads us to an appeal like we had last time, or a 2-2 leads to, and just the fact that it's because people aren't there, I'm seeing, in my opinion, wasted time for staff, for the applicant, for the community, and I would prefer an appeal of an applicant versus the community than an applicant appealing because there was a 2-2 type of situation. It becomes awkward a little bit. So then I'll get to my concerns. My concern is, and I get it, you're on TPZ, but I wish you had gone through the TPZ process of converting and doing your timber process prior to going through us, in the sense that it's a prohibited activity where I'm not sure that it means anything if it's under prohibited activity, removal of trees. I know it says minimize and avoid, but what I don't see is plan A was this, plan B was this, plan C was this. Here's the best option for us to minimize and avoid. And if I don't see that, then I don't know that we did any type of avoiding other than my well's right here, it's easiest, and the sloping is right, so I'm just going to cut these trees down. Like this is the second one with a large amount of trees. I think last time it was easy to be able to make that change. I don't think it's that easy for you today because I see where the infrastructure is, I see where the right place to farm is, but I need to look at the code, and the code says tree removal is a prohibited activity. We should minimize and avoid. And I don't feel like we're doing that if we're not even showing alternatives to the project to minimize and avoid, and I'm not seeing that. Maybe there's something that I'm not seeing historically to get to that point, but I'm not seeing that. My other concern is the changes that I'm seeing. So I had to look up the California Clearinghouse CEQA to see what it is that we actually submitted to the California Clearinghouse versus what's in front of us today. I have concerns that we're highlighting new information. There's some subtle, maybe typographical errors where it still has all the old information of 6.6 acre feet versus the 4.9 acre feet of water because of the reduction. I think those are more typographical than anything else. But one of them is the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer conducted a site visit. At that time, there was evidence of tribal cultural resources. That's new and never made it to the clearinghouse. And then we have 6 new mitigations that came out of it. Now, they are your typical run-of-the-mill mitigations that come along with most of the cultural preservation mitigations that come with most projects, but to highlight that there is evidence of such and that it never made it to the state clearinghouse for public comment and that now it shows up, there's certain other issues where I would prefer that what I'm reading as a CEQA document is the same document that was approved or passed through the clearinghouse process, not with this level of change, and it makes me uncomfortable. I feel like we should resubmit that to the clearinghouse.
We are happy to speak to what level of adjustment triggers a recirculation. This did go through an initial circulation of the initial study, and then when the project changed, it went through a recirculation. But I'll turn it over to Senior Planner Iris to address what would prompt a further recirculation. And then I'll bring it back to talk a little bit about the timber conversion, should you like more information on that one.
If you don't mind, I just want to finish. And I get the timber conversion, but it just, again, how does it fit within the code where it says prohibited activity to say, well, as long as you can get a permit for it, go for it, but yet it's because of this project that we're saying yes. So it's kind of a rough, like, why is it in our code? We just reapproved the amendment to the code, and it's still in the code. And so the next person who says they want to cut trees, I'm going to have to say yes, because if we say yes here and we said yes to the others, then I feel like we're just breaking what we created. And the other one is also the number of trees, and the process is not specific in the CEQA document that went to the clearinghouse versus what it is now in front of us, and that continues to make me nervous. And I know you've explained to me in the past of what the triggers are. That doesn't change my caution that we are kind of taking a larger role by approving changes to a CEQA document that have not gone through the statewide public comment process with what I am saying, in my opinion, are significant changes, and you may not agree with me. But those are my comments. I think the rest, the location, the water, and is it Elie or Eli? Elie. Angela Amaral mentioned the letter from Andrew Amalong, and I have great respect for Mr. Amalong and the work that he did when he was here. And his letter is significant in more ways than none. That makes me really concerned about the treatment in the department and such. But I do know that he highlighted you as an individual, and I thank you for your patience. It sounds like you got upset at one point or another, but he said rightfully so. But I just want to share my appreciation because it is a long process to go through. I just wish if it said tree removal, we would have, just like we should have alternatives to major CEQA project. I don't see alternatives, and I would prefer that we see that. I'm looking at your property. I've never been to your property, but it looks like there's places where there's less vegetation, but probably not as suitable to farm. I would just love to see those alternatives and then reasons why those alternatives don't work, rather than just one size, one project, here it is, and this is what we're doing when it doesn't fit correctly. So I'm done with my comments.
Yes, thank you for those. So to answer your question about when recirculation is required, I'll bore you a little bit with some CEQA code. So section 15073.5 addresses recirculation of a negative declaration prior to adoption, which is where we're at today. So there are a number of criteria. The main thing is that we are required as the lead agency to recirculate a negative dec or an initial study when there are substantial revisions to it. So substantial is defined as a new avoidable significant effect that was not previously disclosed, or if we determine that there is just something that basically wasn't identified previously. So we did that in the case of the first recirculation with the bigger red lines that you noted that is on SequaNet. So then we went through and redlined further regarding small changes, as you noted, the number of trees, for example. The cultural resources and tribal cultural resources mitigation measures were changed, really strengthened, because we had been, for a little bit of background, we have heard repeatedly from the Planning Commission, I think last year, that they wanted to really separate out cultural versus tribal cultural resources because they are different and distinct. So the cultural resources mitigation measures that were in the initial study and are still there, but they're redlined now, were separated out a little bit further into tribal cultural resources as well. No new significant impacts were identified, but we did strengthen them further. So under subsection C of that CEQA section I noted, recirculation is not required under the following circumstances. Mitigation measures are replaced with equal or more effective measures. New project revisions are added in response to written or verbal comments that are received that do not lead to new unavoidable significant effects. And then you can also add measures or conditions of project approval can be added after circulation of the M&D, which do not create new significant impacts. You're probably seeing a theme here. It's really about what's substantial and then what if something leads to a new significant impact. In the case of the cultural mitigations, for example, that's not a new identified impact. We were just further clarifying to appropriately categorize the two different cultural versus tribal cultural and strengthening those. Happy to answer any further questions you may have. Regarding the trees, it was redlined to say 76, and now the applicant is proposing 71 because they are preserving those 5, I think they're black oaks, And so that's something that we're happy to redline further after this if approved. That, again, would not be a substantial new impact. It's actually less of an impact. But if the board wishes to have that clean and clear in the record, we're happy to do that as well.
All right. Any other board members want to go? Or, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Well, I want to really thank all the members of the community that have come out and voiced their concerns about this project. I think it's complicated. There's always a complicated balance between community impact and private property rights. And it's a conversation that we have all the time. And this is a low impact project, and lower because of your willingness to work with the neighbors, which I think is really telling. I didn't hear from any of the public how those conversations went, but hearing from you that you've been reaching out to them and trying to work with them to make it lower impact, I think is significant. There's a conversation and comment about dry wells. I was looking up to see if there were any reported dry wells in the area, and I haven't seen any for a long time. There's some green dots, which are years old. So I'm glad, Angie, you brought that up. This is an area that has seen a lot of agricultural growth in the past several decades. And I know anecdotally we hear about dry wells there all the time. But if they're not reported and we don't have data on them, it's really hard to verify. And so for the public, there is a way you can report if there's ever a dry well, go through the state's portal and report it, and then it marks a pin, and we've got those markings all over the county, so we can refer to those. I wish there was also the timber conversion plan here. It's always a really difficult conversation when you talk about taking trees out, but I do appreciate that it is a lower footprint than it was. And then the easement's been brought up several times today too. I was looking at the transfer of the property, the year that was transferred, and then the year that the easement was signed. But I'm not the title company, and I think that does need to be verified. So those were my big areas of concern. I think having 5 people there on site, realistically, is not bigger than a family. If someone were to build a home there, it's not adding more traffic. So that part of it, although I hear the concerns, I understand that, we're right in the middle of fire season right now, and evacuation is always a concern, but realistically, there's only 5 people, even in the height, maybe 6 of the harvest. So I do think that is also very low impact. So I think a lot of great points have been brought up today, but this project is consistent with many of the others that we've approved. And I would like to see that the timber conversion plan be a requirement, and also the clearing of the easement and checking the title.
Go ahead, Supervisor Crandall.
Supervisor Sabatier brought up something that I think outside of the project per se. Lloyd, I just wanted to see if we can have a future discussion about the situation with Planning Commission. We're talking about folks that are appointed, and they do, we have had consistent issues with having a full quorum, and then the 2-to-1, dynamic as well. I think it'd be prudent for us to talk about either alternates or something. I know that they, looked at the bylaws and whatnot, but I think we got to figure something out because that would take off. If we can figure that out some way, shape, or form and eliminate the 2-to-1 dynamic, I think that's one thing that I have an issue with, is that 2-to-1 is an automatic appeal or something like that. So again, my point is I think it'd be good to have a discussion about that. Sure.
Yeah, and I've also had the similar concerns from what I've seen recently. I think we ought to put something on the agenda to get a discussion started at a future date to just look into all that stuff.
Was it 2 to?
This was 2 to 2.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was just bringing up.
Right, he's just in general. the whole situation with the commission on the lower attendance, not having all of our commissioners. But regarding the project, my biggest concern is the trees. I always look at, you know, the whole big picture of the environment where we're at today with the environmental conditions and taking out. I know there's mitigations to plant more trees, but I don't necessarily think it's the same. And taking out mature trees or fully grown trees to me is a big concern, and I don't know. I haven't heard alternatives. If there's other ways to move this project forward without cutting those trees. Regarding the if it does get approved, I would like to see some follow-up on that easement. Everything I see, I would say that's a valid easement, but we're not experts. We don't figure those kind of things out, so that I would just be more comfortable. But there's certainly, I haven't seen any evidence to show that the grantor couldn't have granted that easement. But so my biggest concern today in voting yes for this would be, you know, not enough view of other alternatives than cutting these mature trees down. I think a lot of the other things that have brought up and been concerns, there's mitigations for them. I don't think it's a large project with 5 employees. I don't think that's going to create a ton of traffic, but that's where my concern in approving it would be the trees. Go ahead, Supervisor Sabatier.
I have a dumb question. So I agree with your comment about the replanting. Like I'm sorry, I just don't believe that replanting is the solution. We have trees that are hundreds of years old that are going to be cut down, and 100 years ago it was a vastly different environment for them to blossom and grow and become healthy trees. And so I just struggle with this idea that we're going to replant the trees that we are taking down and they're going to have the exact same outcome than the ones that we cut down. I just feel like there's going to be a less than expected scenario. That's just me. I know we're doing the ratio and so on and so forth, but I struggle because the planet is getting hotter. We know this. And so that's my comment to you. Let's just say you get this permit and you're 10 years into it. And I mean, we're experiencing the hottest year yet again. Next year will probably be the hottest year. Isn't shade a useful thing? And wouldn't trimming and pruning trees to allow sunlight to come through and then plant between there be helpful to have shade and sunlight? I feel at one point a vacant lot with just straight sunshine, you're gonna burn the plants. And so is it a possibility where you don't cut down 76, we get a smaller amount of trees that you can cut down? I know that there was an email, but it was a very vague email of, I think 15% are dead or diseased. It would be nice to know rather than just have a random statement like that. And then if you take out those dead and diseased trees and prune the rest, don't you have something that can last for the next 10 to 30 years as this planet keeps getting hotter and hotter? Because farming is going to change in the situation that we have going on. Everything that can be grown down south will now be grown here, just like agave is starting to come up here because the climate has changed. So is opening up and putting nothing but sun the right concept for long term? And does it allow you to get what you're looking for from your plants if there's pruning and trimming of dead and diseased trees? I guess is my question.
This is Angie Dodd, North Point. I'll let him respond to that in a second. I just wanted to give a little background on the less than 3 acre conversion. This application was submitted, I think, in 2021 or 2022. And at the time, it was not advisable to do a less than 3 acre conversion for a cannabis project before submitting it because of the tree comment in the ordinance and how that would be perceived. So, I mean, we're talking what now, 5 years ago, but at that time, that's why it wasn't done before an application was, if it was a house, if you could say it was for a house, it just felt like it was being a little piecemealy and cutting down the trees before, okay, so now you've already cut down the trees, what do we do now? So that's why it wasn't done at that time, because the thought was it wouldn't look very good to the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors to clear that, and then immediately after that submit an application. Even though you can legally do that, it was a perception issue because of that. I just wanted to say the history on that. Now you guys, you can talk about it.
And I appreciate that. And also, I apologize for not remembering, but the conversion is for a specific purpose and reason, such as building a home. But then you come back, you say, oh yeah, well, now that it's clear. And I think both look bad in the sense that now we're trying to overrule a prohibited activity by saying it's okay to do this, but yet it's up.
I just wanted to say that it's not just a bad look. It's actually unlawful to use a it's essentially less than 3 acre conversion exemption is essentially exemption from CEQA. So it's unlawful to use it for essentially nefarious purposes, it's stating that you're using it for one reason when you're actually doing it for another. And I'll
Right.
So, Bruno, I appreciate your comments. And if there is a win-win on this of keeping trees, I'm in favor of it. I strive to do regenerative ag, and that will mean that we would, wherever we remove the trees, we would grow in the ground. So if there's big trees with roots, we would not be able to use the native soil and pull the beds, similar to pasta farms. When we pull beds with a tractor, we'll be using plastic mulch to conserve the water. And we're really working to improve that soil. And when we improve that soil through growing the organic matter, through cover crops and rotational grazing of these animals, when we're not growing cannabis, that soil health, we plan to monitor it, it will improve and it will hold more water. Also, we did keep the best trees on that cultivation site. We hiked the whole site with Trish and recently, and the healthiest trees, we said these ones are beautiful. We want to keep these for shade and out of respect. And when we asked Seamus, we said, hey, what's the average life of these other trees? He stated that they were not 80 years old, maybe the 5 that we kept, but the other ones were significantly younger than that. So we kept the best trees of trying to create a win-win. And we also surveyed the rest of the property, which is very shady and is perfect environment for growing up the oak trees, which we plan to monitor. Seamus had said he's the forester. He had said he had written numerous plans to regrow oak trees, but nobody had implemented them. I would be the first applicant that's actually excited and that would grow these oak trees, put them on irrigation, work with Seamus for the next 7 years to regrow healthier trees in a better environment than where they currently are.
That was not a last good comment in the sense that nobody else is doing if we're asking them to redo the planting.
I mean that the other applicants have not moved forward with this plan of replanting the trees at a 3-to-1. I'm actually passionate about growing other things than cannabis. I raise beef cows. We grow organic 3-way hay at a different property. I'm a Farm Bureau member since 2019. I'm a farmer and rancher. I really enjoy watching things grow, not just cannabis. And shade is important, and the climate is important to me.
Thank you. Is there anything else from the board, or do we have proposed action?
Actually, we do have one last point to address. If we could just take a 1-minute break. I'd like to, we do have an ordinance adopted by the county regarding preservation of trees, and it does list a number of criteria recommended, which this project does meet, so we'd appreciate the opportunity to point that out. It's coming right now, I just need a minute.
Okay, so we'll be in a couple-minute recess.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call our meeting back to order, and we took a short break because the CDD asked to get some time to get a copy of the tree ordinance?
Thank you. I was mistaken. It's a resolution. We do not have a tree preservation ordinance. However, it has long been a preference of the department to develop one. And so because of that, it has been included in a number of areas in the Lake County 2050 project to develop not only a tree preservation ordinance that's not specific to oaks, but also a wildlife corridor preservation. So that is all included as a future action. What we do have is a resolution passed in 1995 adopting a management policy for oak woodlands in Lake County, which did recognize that responsible stewardship by landowners is necessary to sustain oak woodland resources, and also recognized that good stewardship is most often fostered through private ownership and self-determination of the private landowners. It also recognized that while there wasn't a threat to oaks then, which in 1995 is significantly different to what we are seeing today through climate changes and the Mediterranean oak borer, it did recognize that urban development, intensive agriculture, and extensive fuel harvesting could pose a future risk. So it required monitoring of oak woodland resources be done by the Coordinating Resource Management Committee, which I think has probably morphed since then. Additionally, monitoring the oaks, educating the public, and finally, number 4, incentive programs that foster the maintenance and improvement of oak woodlands, recognizing that those are important tools to sustain the resources. And the county encourages and supports private enterprise, public-private partnerships, conservation easements where applicable, and timber preservation zoning as tools for the private property owners to receive benefit for sustaining the oak woodlands. We also have used recommendations from the Oak Woodlands Conservation Act, which highlights funding and conservation easements and mitigations, such as replanting. So just to point out that this project as proposed does include both a conservation easement on 20 acres, the no-use zone, as well as the replanting of the trees, which does satisfy the resolution as posed by the Board of Supervisors. Until we are able to develop an appropriate oak woodland mitigation plan, which will have to, of course, also take into account the oak woodlands that are dying significantly and quickly in our county, and how to deal with those as well. This resolution is what we have, and the project does satisfy it by the no develop zone, which preserves those trees, as well as the replanting in the area where they already see the baby trees popping up. So they recognize that as an appropriate area for the encouragement of the replanting of trees. Thank you.
Okay.
I think from what I remember too, there was some talk about that in the cannabis task force or something along those lines about having some sort of ordinance. Maybe we could look back into that.
It's long been a preferred action, but that we have not completed yet. We were working on it back when I was a planner, an oak preservation ordinance, but it never came to be. And when I returned, I actually also started working with Donna Makowitz, who's been working with Chair Rasmussen on development of that oak ordinance as well. I will be happy to pick that back up.
Yes, thank you for that, because it has been around for a long time. Is there any questions from supervisors on the update with the resolution that we went over? All right. Then it's in front of us at this point. Go ahead.
I'll just make my final comment. As is with the comments I made, I struggle. I know that we had a good discussion. Thank you for the discussion. That the conversion of timberland for agricultural projects is a legitimate request that can be approved. That there is a process for that, but it still doesn't change the fact that it is a prohibited activity with the idea of avoiding and minimizing. And so choosing to save 5 trees out of the 70, in my opinion, is not necessarily minimizing. And I don't have a crystal ball on, there's always a mystery vote, at least up on this dais, and so I don't know which direction it goes. But the way that I feel it might go, I would definitely advise finding an alternative plan versus being denied, because I think that would at least leave you to be able to do your project.
Yeah, and I'll just say I'm not comfortable approving it right now with the trees, just so that's known. Go ahead, Supervisor Owen.
Running the water's a big one for me. The trees also, very much so. But running the water numbers, I just came up with a completely different number. So I was kind of guessing and reaching for the number of plants. You guys had confirmed 5,000 plants, 6 gallons per day. And I'm assuming that's kind of in the later ages of the plants, because the summer months are when our water table is at its lowest. So 5,000 plants per acre, as you guys had mentioned, 6 gallons per day works to 30,000 gallons per day per acre, which is 90,000 gallons per day for the project. And with average 30 days in the month, that's 2,700,000 gallons versus the 411,000 that you have showed in October. So the water issue for me is massive. I'm one that has had a well go dry as a young kid when somebody started pumping too much. They needed the water. Our well, we had to drill another well. It was on us. So for the people in the area, when we have, I think that how much water they're actually going to be using needs to be determined, and the number of plants needs to be up front as well, so that we can see what the water usage is and what is needed. So between the timber and the water, I can't support it.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
So it looks like there's 3 no votes. I want to just ask you, do you want to take this back? Do you want to do more work on the plan? Do you want us to take the vote? How do you want to move forward, Forrest?
Yeah, I think we should reassess our plan. I hear your concerns about the water and the trees, and I think it sounds like at this point we should. Am I allowed to consult with my team before I make my decision?
Happy to take a lunch.
Yeah, we can. What we can do is trail this item and handle it after lunch if the board is okay with that. That would give you time to talk to your team, and also then we could hear back on, because I have questions about the process of how that would go forward if that happens. Okay, so we'll be in recess until 1:40. Okay, I'm going to call our meeting back to order, and we'll continue with the 10 a.m. item that we were discussing before we broke for lunch.
Thank you, Chair Rasmussen. The applicant/appellant does have proposed changes, and I will turn the microphone over to that party so they can describe them to you.
Okay, do you want to describe that to us?
On behalf of the applicant, we would like to request a additional condition of approval be added. That condition would limit tree removal to dead, dying, diseased trees only, and allow for the clearing of understory vegetation and ladder fuels, as well as the limiting of trees as necessary to provide access along the roadways for sufficient CAL FIRE clearance.
So bringing that back, then we would remove the existing condition regarding tree removal, supplant it with this new proposed condition. We would also add a condition that updated site plans would be submitted prior to operation.
Okay, so would this be something that you're going to bring back in writing, or are we going to make the decision?
Because this has reduced environmental impacts, this would not cause a recirculation of the initial study, and you can feel free to proceed today.
Okay. So One, go ahead.
So the removal of only diseased, dead, and dying, is that what you said? And verified by an arborist?
This, go ahead.
Arborist or a registered professional forester.
Okay.
We've been working with a registered professional forester so far and would like to continue to do so.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Additionally, those trees would be identified on the site plan that would come as and stand then as the approved site plan on record going forward.
Okay, did you still have a question?
She was on the exact same page I was as far as having some level of professional to state that these are dead and dying trees or diseased trees.
And that would be something that would come back to your attention?
It will come back to our department and be part of the file for the ongoing project specifications.
Okay. All right.
And that would be enough to lead me towards being happier to say yes.
Okay.
Not that I need to be happy.
All right, Supervisor Owen.
Well, I really appreciate that. I still am having issues with the water, however. The information has you at peak in October, 411,000 gallons of water for the whole project, correct? As I read it. But at 5,000 plants, at 6 gallons per day, which would be the most because they're smaller plants, so I had to reduce that, still comes to 30,000 gallons per acre per month. Times the 3 would be 90,000 gallons per day. I mean, that was per day, I'm sorry, which comes out to over 2.5 million gallons per month. So I'm just not sure on the numbers, and I've ran them a few times, and I'm just concerned about the water.
We could agree to disagree, but the 6 gallons per minute per plant is extremely high and not realistic for this situation.
Oh, 6 gallons? No, it was per plant per day. I'm sorry.
Which is still high. For such small plants, yes.
During maturity? That's because I thought that's what you had stated earlier, that it was 6.
I did it my computer's sitting in the car because it was locked. I got locked out. I don't do it by gallons per day. I do it by square foot of canopy, and it's 3,600 something square foot of canopy. So I treat all the canopy the same. So it's based on canopy, and it's throughout the entire season. And I'd have to divide it by the canopy and convert to gallons per day.
Yeah, and I don't have a grasp on how you're doing that, in all honesty. And so I probably fed into my AI search, since I'm not familiar with cannabis, the wrong information I may have. That's easy enough. I don't know how to do it any other way than by plant, and that's why I was asking that information, how many plants you were.
And the reason I do it by gallons per day per canopy is to avoid the conversation about the number of plants, because it takes care of all of it. Whether they treat them the same, whether they're small, this is the most conservative high number based on square foot of canopy. And the numbers in the report are, I don't have that table in front, but that is the 4.9 acre feet per year. And then he'll pull up the gallon one. That one. Yeah, and then the table shows that the peak use, I have it in
October,
yeah, sorry.
At 411,000 gallons per month. And I was coming out with a significantly different, because I was going by plant, because I don't know how else to measure the water.
Dodged for that table, and then the date, I apologize. It's what is in that table, and then the daily amounts are in the hydrology report. There is an average daily and a peak daily, which would occur at the highest part of the season.
So in the study, it references 500 plants with diameter of 10 feet per plant, which it's not quite 100 square feet per plant. I have to do pi, but anyways, these plants are going to be much smaller. Like each individual plant is going to occupy 2 to 6 square feet, as opposed to close to 100 square feet. Not 2, 4 it is.
And I had read that, but I started getting numbers gerbled. And that's why I thought they were large plants, I think.
And so the calculation comes out to the same amount of water usage if you use 500 plants that each have, roughly or a little less than 10 square or 100 square feet per plant versus 5,000 plants with less than 10 square feet per plant. It's just a difference between 500 very large plants and 5,000 very small plants. One of the reasons you want, as an operator, would want very small plants is because very large plants take a lot of infrastructure and effort to maintain, whereas smaller plants, they support themselves. Larger plants, you need to provide some kind of support structure for them. Trellis is what's commonly used, but small plants, they can support themselves, don't need that. But they occupy a much smaller area. And so, you couldn't fit 5,000 100 square foot plants within an acre. That would be, over an acre.
Right. Okay.
All right, Vice Chair.
But you're also using hoop houses too, right? Wasn't there a conversation about that?
And hoop houses would possibly be allowable under the temporary hoop house ordinance.
Okay.
I imagine that Forrest can speak to me that there would be a portion, especially now that we have this tree preservation aspect of it. Prior, nearly all of the canopy would have been in hoop houses, but now we're going to have to manage around the trees. And so there will be areas where hoop houses are going to be used, and there will be temporary hoop houses, and then areas where they're just not feasible due to the tree preservation.
Okay. That just reduced the amount of water needed. Okay.
So then also, if this were to get approved, how are we going to deal with the easement question on the confirmation?
We would still add that condition of approval requiring a legal recorded easement.
Okay, so that would...
contesting of that easement then would be left to the permittee and the property owners.
Okay, and they would have to show or provide that before they could operate under use?
It would be a requirement of operation, yes.
Okay, all right. I don't have any other questions at this point. Let me check in with County Council. She probably public comment regarding the updated plan. So I will open it up to the public, but it's I'm going to say this is only limited to what's been introduced since we came back from lunch, which is the modification of the application to remove the cutting of the trees and only propose to cut dead and dying trees or trees, as I heard, that were related to access. And that would be an updated plan. So, and I'll give folks, can I limit the time on that? So 1 minute for comment, if anybody has comment to this limited update. Go ahead, sir. And you'll have 1 minute.
I'm going to be very brief. I will just say that regardless of the hydrolysis qualification, I'll submit that we have two equally competent, professional, well-respected hydrologists who highly contest her conclusions, and that should be taken into much more serious consideration. I know you see what is trying to happen just to try and go back and forth here. I think we need to have a complete airing of these issues, because they're serious issues, particularly given the drought progressions. We're not in a static circumstance. We're looking at much more significant and serious water issues coming down the pike.
Thank you.
I'm very disappointed about how casually you seem to be taking water supply in Lake County. I'm one who had a dried up well, and you have to take into account, it's your responsibility to take into account the citizens of Lake County have access to clean water. We shouldn't have to worry about wells drying up, wells becoming full of sediments that are expensive filtration. So don't forget that.
Thank you.
Contrary to what Mr. Elie said, title companies do not insure easements. I've been in real estate for 45 years, and that does not happen. There are exemptions to their coverage. So they're not covered, and it's a totally invalid easement because it was granted by somebody who didn't own the property. And this will be tied up for years in court if it needs to be. And I was going to say something else, and and then the other thing is that the whole cultivation exclusion was just glossed over. It's in an exclusion zone. Can't be approved.
Thank you.
Hello again, Alex Powell. I think I want to hone in on the water again. Not just the usage of water, which to me is already worrisome, but the location of everything. The well is right there on the creek bed, Seigler Canyon Creek, which goes through our sanctuary, but also goes all the way to Cache Creek and to the lake. The well position on the map that was submitted is not accurate. It's actually next to the road, which again is on the creek headlands. So there's just, again, as everyone's saying, I just feel like it needs a review to verify the information right above the property. Now, this is a property that's just over the hill into the valley where the sanctuary is and all the neighborhood is. So this is coming in to that valley now, and it's imposing. And that's where they're tapping the well. So it is going to affect everything on that side of the hill. It just will. This is a serious consideration with the water. And I agree with everyone else. Please consider.
Thank you. Next in the room.
Good afternoon, Chair. Tom Lasik. I know that since lunch they're considering, or since last public comment, they're considering making as a condition of approval language around the easement. My understanding of Article 27, and I'm just going to ask this question. If the county is not determining whether the recorded easement authorizes proposed commercial cannabis use and the required inspection, emergency, and delivery access, then how is the county making the finding that required by Article 27 that the site has the required access? It seems like we're punting and hoping that somehow that's done outside. The idea that, oh, this is a civil matter, the way the ordinance is actually written, this has to be determined prior to approval. It's part of road suitability. If you can't demonstrate the road is suitable, then you're not supposed to be granting a permit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Amanda Martin. Well, I am getting deja vu from the Pasta Farms hearing. Just because they are removing the tree removal from this application does not mean that it's not still detrimental to the environment. We don't know what the impact will really be on the water table. Do you really feel comfortable in approving it today without that knowledge, without those numbers? I mean, taking the trees out is a good concession. Thank you for that. But there will still be impact to the total environment, especially the water. I mean, I feel like I should just stand here and pause so we can all really take that in. The water, do we feel comfortable with that? Do you feel like you can approve this today based on what you know? I don't feel comfortable at all as a citizen. Really, do you? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Lynn Wagner, Lake County resident for 50 years. I find it humorous and rather absurd that the applicant is talking about only using water for little plants, because little plants grow to become big plants. That's the whole purpose of planting something. You grow it and cultivate it so that it becomes larger, and then you have something substantial and worthy to cultivate and harvest and sell. So the argument of, well, they're just little plants, that seems absurd to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Supervisors, Marco Cambara. Again, the water. It's wonderful that the applicant has seen to modify the tree removal plan. It's great. We still have the problem of water availability. So as your board is filling in to make that decision that could not be officially made by the Planning Commission, you are weighing whether the mitigated negative declaration requirements are met under CEQA, which means has the environmental impacts, cumulative impacts of water been addressed, adequately addressed. We have evidence provided by the neighbors offering comment that wells have already gone dry. We're talking about water usage that will increase in that area. What, 1 million gallons? 1 million gallons, period. You wonder.
Thank you.
So anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please reconsider.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room? And is there anyone online, Johanna? Sterling?
Yeah, hi. So with this easement, I'm through litigation on one of my properties with easement, and I think the county should really step back and maybe ask county council. Easements is a civil matter. It's not a board of supervisors. It's not CDD. It's nothing to do with planning. That's all a civil matter. And if they went and bought their property and it is stated through a title company, because a title company does know where easements are at because they have to research properties in order to notarize properties correctly. So if there is an easement on that property and it is shown in the real estate paperwork, that is enough proof. Now, if you guys want to contest that easement, then it has to be brought to the courts of California in a civil case to dispute that easement. And until people can come to this board and prove that that easement is not there and it was not given by the property owner, then as
Thank you, Sterling.
right now, that is, thank you.
Sterling, that was the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else? Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all the discussion, first I'd say to Mr. Elie, thank you for reducing the tree removal to ones that are died, diseased. And then for the board, maybe consider continuing this discussion and request CDD to provide your board with the well reports for all the projects within a 3-mile radius. That might help you guys to get a better understanding of what's going on with the water in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Donna.
Donna Makowitz, you'll have 1 minute.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Board. This is Donna Makowitz, Red Bud Audubon. The modification for the trees is a small concession, but there are huge cumulative impacts that need to be addressed, especially the water, and also a complete new recent biological assessment is needed. Just having a forester or arborist reviewing the trees is simply not enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Was there anyone else?
Okay.
Then I'm going to close that public comment and bring it back to the board for any further questions, comments, or go ahead, Supervisor.
I guess just sorry to belabor the point on the easement, but it has the Lake County Recorder's stamp on there, which means that it is in our records that it comes from. Am I incorrect on my statement?
That is correct.
So to me, that goes through a vetting process before it gets recorded. And when any paperwork on easements are recorded, those go with the properties. They do not go with the individuals. And so if somehow or another somebody defrauded us in the sense that they lied and gave us all the right information for us to accidentally record a document, we have to trust, and we can't go through a deep dive with every single document that we have that's been recorded. And this is where it becomes a civil matter. We have an official document from the recorder's office. It states the correct properties. That is the reason we're having the conversation, is because, yes, part of our rules and regulations is there has to be road access. everything we see with official paperwork says there is road access. If there's further dispute, that's not here nor there, that's in civil court. So I just wanted to at least make those statements, see if county council agrees with that. I know I'm getting a nod of agreement from a CDD director as well as a nod from county council. I'll let you at least say it verbally rather than just a nod.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that is generally correct. Your board sitting in as a quasi judicial body can rely on recorded easements as well as other documents as evidence in making your decision. Your board is not in a position to issue what would normally be a court decision of a final legal adjudication of private property rights on title disputes.
Okay. I have a follow-up question, County Council. So based on this further discussion about that, would that be appropriate for this board not to have any kind of a directive about what has to be done with that easement, or is that still okay?
That would be fine. I believe Director Turner has earlier on, prior to trailing this matter, has proposed some language to be added, I believe, on the conditions, on the permit conditions as it relates to the easement. I believe that revision or addition would be located in condition 826. I believe Director Turner put that on the record. So that could be part of your board's decision and part of your board's findings. Any revisions or modifications to the conditions of the permit that was initially presented to your board, if your board decides to agree to those revisions, would result in a granting of the appeal in part subject to those changes. And I could walk your board through the motion language when your board is ready.
Okay. Go ahead.
What are we asking in that condition of approval? Prove what we've already gotten for proof? Like, I almost feel like it's unnecessary for us to show proof when we have proof in our attachments, we have proof from the recorder's office. What else are we wanting?
Well, that's why I was trying to clarify if it was actually, public comments closed, sir. Thank you. To clarify if it would even be appropriate or not something that we shouldn't dive into.
The proposed condition for an easement pretty much just paraphrases what is already in Article 27, but the purpose of adding it specifically as a condition would be to offer the board a level of comfort regarding access.
I think it doesn't do anything other than ask what we've already asked in the first place and that we've provided.
Yeah, that's certainly where it appears now, because when I commented earlier, that's what I said, everything appears legal from the county document, but I think we're going to be ready for action.
Chair,
yes.
If we could, just for clarification for the minutes purposes, if we could list to you and confirm the amendments that would be added to this project.
Yes, that's a good idea.
We have them formulated.
Okay.
Okay. Hi. Good afternoon. Trish Turner, Associate Planner, Community Development Department. So we will be adding, prior to the permit being valid, the permittee shall provide an updated site plan and related documents to the Community Development Department to reflect the changes approved by the Board of Supervisors on August 4th, 2026. That's under General, number 2. And then under General, 27 would be prior to ground disturbing activities. The permittee shall contact CAL FIRE to confirm if a timber conversion permit and or harvest document is required. If required, the document shall be submitted to the Community Development Department.
I thought we got rid of that.
I still think that maybe just because it's timberland, they might have to, even though there's no tree removal proposed, there's just, we want them to confirm with CAL FIRE if they need a conversion or not. With the dead trees.
If we can somewhere in there in relation to section, whatever that section is, to only getting rid of dead, dying, and diseased trees, that way they go together and it doesn't get seen as separate. That would make me feel better.
Okay. So then the next one would be to remove Prior to any work that involves disturbing the ground or removing trees or brush, the applicant must follow the tree removal and replacement plan that they submitted to the county. This plan shows that 76 mature and healthy oak trees that are greater than 5 inches in diameter at 4.5 dBH will be removed. Each of these oak trees. Yeah, it's getting removed. Yeah, it's being removed. And then it's being replaced with tree removal shall be limited to dead, dying, and disease trees as identified by a certified arborist or certified forester. Tree trimming and vegetation clearance in accordance with CAL FIRE regulations and the county's grading ordinance is permitted. Prior to any ground disturbing activities, the applicant shall submit revised site plans to the Community Development Department identifying the dead, diseased, and dying trees for removal.
Okay. Any other?
And what was that number? I'm sorry, my internet's down. I'm trying to get stuff to on my phone. What was the number for the dead, dying trees? Condition of approval number?
Oh, the condition of approval number will be to the removal of number 5 under bio, and then the addition of number 7 under bio.
And the one with the CAL FIRE with the conversion, can we make sure it relates to?
Yeah, I can remove that from that section and put it with this one.
That would be good. I just want to make sure again that they
Perfect.
coincide together.
Yeah, so that will be under bio 7 and 8.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Just for clarification for CDD staff, are there going to be any, will there be any proposed revisions to, you said bio section 6 or number 6, is that D6 under the conditions of permit?
Yes.
So D6 as well.
Okay.
I do apologize. What happened to B7?
You said B7 is the new one. It's the new one.
But there's already a B7.
Oh, the numbering will renumber.
Okay, so
because
it
we're
just moved
removing
down.
one.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that it
Yeah,
wasn't
no.
being removed. That's all.
Because we're removing the tree removal and then adding some.
I just thought it was supplanting.
All right. Anything else, Supervisor Sabatier?
Appreciate.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, I do appreciate the modifications, but I'm not still 100% comfortable, but it does sound like there's votes here to pass it. So I think that's where we're at if anyone is going to propose actions.
I'm still can't support it because of the water issues. It's not that I don't want to be supportive of you guys, but I have an obligation to take care of the people that are already there first. And it's not that I don't want to support you. And I really appreciate the give on the trees. That was because with it being in Timberland Preserve, I thought that was really important. But the water issues, I'm still not understanding the figures. So I need to go back to school, I think, on that.
All right.
We get the recommended action.
Go ahead, for county council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for your board's consideration, your board may make a motion to grant the appeal in part and modify the permit subject to the specified conditions that was outlined by CDD staff and presented to your board. And that would be appeal. This is in reference, the granting of the appeal would be in part appeal number PL-26-357 and direct staff to prepare findings of fact, and your board's action would be based on pages 12 to 13 of the June 11, 2026 staff report, which was attached as Exhibit A. That would be the motion.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
That carries 3-2. Thank you. That concludes that item.